Hello, my name is Hugo Leveillé and welcome to my new training on how to do photogrammetry for Nuke. So throughout this training, we're going to see how to do photogrammetry inside of Metashape, and then we'll see how we can reuse those objects inside of Nuke so that we can build our project and do various things with those objects. So not only is this going to be a very good training to learn Metashape, but also to learn various tricks inside of Nuke on how to do reprojection on those objects and also very advanced technique inside of Nuke. So to learn how to use the software, we'll be doing real case scenario project on how we can integrate those objects inside of Nuke. So to begin, we'll be learning on how to shoot for photogrammetry and how to correctly capture image so that we can have the best possible images to use inside Metashape. Then we'll see how we can use those images and import them inside Metashape to remodel our object, and then we'll see how we can export them so that we can use them inside of Nuke. So let's start by doing a quick overview of all the class that we'll be seeing throughout this training so that we can have a clear idea of what we'll be learning throughout this class. Okay, so before seeing the overview of each class one by one, let's take a quick look of the two projects that we'll be using throughout this class. So if we start with this plate here, this is going to be the plate of our first project. So this is going to be the project where we'll be testing our first object out of Metashape. So it's a very simple drone shot where what we'll be doing is adding a building out of Metashape. So if we take a look at what we'll be doing, so that's the final come that we'll be doing. So that's an object that we'll be making in Metashape. So it's made out of several photography made with a drone. So we'll see how to texture that inside Metashape, how to build the geometry. And then we'll also see how we can export that in Nuke without the use of a 3D software and see very strict like reprojection of texture, so that if we want to modify a part of the geometry in terms of texture, we'll also see how to edit the geometry in the scene of Nuke. And while we're at it, we'll also see various compositing trick on how we can blend this geometry inside our scene by putting it in the grass. And we'll also see all the required step to have a track camera from this scene. So we'll see the camera tracker, how to use the distortion node of Nuke so that we have a good solving of this distortion of the camera. And we'll also see how we can manage the overscan portion of the image in this project. So that's going to be the first project that we'll be making. Then if we take a look at the second project, which is another drone shot. So in this one, we're going to push everything that we've learned in the first project and push it to the next level. So again, we're going to track this shot, but we're going to do much more with this project. So if we close this and take a look at the final output that we'll be doing, so you see that there's a lot of stuff that we've added in this shot. So if we just go back here, so in Metashape, we'll see how to model those block here, as well as this trash here. So we'll see, not only we'll see how to generate that in Metashape, but also in Nuke, we'll see how to add fire element in the trash. We'll also see how to generate a heat shimmer effect like that. And there's so much stuff we're going to do with this project. We're going to modify the texture of every block, even though it's the same object out of Metashape. So we'll see how to reproject the texture, how to add graffiti to it, how to blend the ground of the geometry with the one from the plate. And we'll also see how to model this building in the background, which currently consists of two different sets of building that we'll be stitching together we'll see how to, as we see here, fake a reflection so that we can have a reflection of the own geometry here. And here in this portion of the scene, we'll see how to remodel problematic geometry just using the displaced geo node of Nuke. So we'll also see how to fake shadows on the scene. And actually, this is a modified camera from the original scene. So actually, if we would compare the original camera of the shot to the one that is shooting the scene, the entire plate at some point is reprojected. So that's another thing we'll see, how to reproject a shot using the Solve camera. So there's a lot of things that we're going to learn in this project. So now let's break each class one by one to see what you can expect from this training. So just after this overview of all the class in the end of this video, what we'll be seeing is actually how to correctly shoot images with photogrammetry in mind. So you'll see all the various camera setting that you need to put to have the best possible result and outcome out of Metashape. So we'll see all the required setting for your camera, as well as the camera angle that you need to use if you want the best result of Metashape. And then also at this end of the video, we'll just see quick tips on third-party software like Google Earth and some drone software that you can use to help you when doing photogrammetry. So that's also something we're going to see. So then if we take a look at class 2, which will be our introduction to Metashape. So in this class, we're going to spend the entire class inside Metashape software, which will be our photogrammetry software of choice. So in this class, we're going to take a look at the entire user interface so that you can know your way around the software. And then we'll be building our first asset that we'll be using in the first project. So in this class, we'll see how to build the sparse point cloud, which is the 3D representation and rough representation of your object in 3D. So you'll see how to generate that so that by importing all your image for your object. So we'll also see then how to generate your mesh, how to select portion of the mesh that you want to use. So we'll be seeing all that. We'll see all the different setting required to solve your object. And then we'll also see how to export it so that you can use it in Nuke. And we'll also see various tips like automation that you can build in Metashape to export multiple objects all at once. So this is going to be the class where we're going to spend the most time in Metashape, where we'll be seeing all the required options if you don't already know your way around Metashape. So that's going to be the main course about Metashape. So once we'll be ready to export that in Nuke, then we'll go to class number 3. And that's where we're going to prep our Nuke script for the project. So we're going to do the 3D tracking, see how to manage the distortion of your camera, and also starting the layout of this scene. So we'll be 3D tracking this shot. So if you haven't played with the 3D tracker of Nuke yet, this is going to be a great starting point. And then we'll see how to test our scene by placing a proxy object in the scene so that we can validate that we have a tracking camera for this shot. And once we know that we have a good camera, we'll see how we can, just by taking reference in the scene, how we can scale our object in context of the scene. And we'll also see, after we have placed our proxy object, how to actually manage the distortion of the camera. So that's going to be one way of managing the distortion. And the second project, we'll see a different way to manage the distortion by generating overscan images. But in the first project here, what we're going to do is just kind of the easiest way to manage the distortion, and it's by putting everything in the B box. So that's what we're going to do in the class number 3, setting our first project in Nuke. Then if we go to class number 4, that's where we're going to learn how to re-import the geometry exported out of Metashape. So we'll see how to import and apply the geometry with the texture, the different how the resolution of your mesh affect the performance that we'll have in Nuke, how to with the geometry, and also how to do reprojection inside of Nuke. So we'll see how to apply the texture, how to we'll see the difference quality of the mesh that we can import. Then we'll also see the different texture, so the resolution, the difference in the resolution, and we'll remodel also a bit our geometry so that we can do some quick fix directly inside of Nuke without going to a 3D software. And then we'll see how to export your camera out of Metashape with the undistorted photo, so that once you'll be in Nuke, here you'll be able to reproject some texture on your geometry, either to have better resolution, or if you just want to, for instance, change the texture that you want to apply on your geometry. So that's going to be the class where we'll be seeing how to correctly re-import camera out of Metashape. Then in class 5, that's where we'll be finalizing the first project. So that's where we'll place our exported geometry in the scene. We'll see how to blend the ground out of the geometry with the one from the plate. So we'll see very strict on how we can modify the geometry to blend it with the plate. Then we'll also see some trick to blend the geometry inside the grass of the shot. And we'll also play a bit with the different gizmo also, but also with the PMAT of Nuke, so that we can do various color correction. So we'll also see that, and we'll also see how to reproject texture on your geometry. So for instance here, if you want to just add a texture to your geometry, and then you can project this texture using one of the solve camera of Metashape. So that's going to be the final class on our first project. So a lot of different compositing trick that we'll learn through this class. So then we'll start our second and more advanced project. So that will be class number 6. So again, we're going to spend some time planning our shot. So we'll see what we're going to do, what we want to add with this shot. So we're going to plan carefully what we'll be doing in the shot. And then we'll take a quick overview of the various object that we'll be using in this second project. So we'll take a look at all those different assets that we'll be using. And I'm also going to explain the other distortion method that you can manage in Nuke. So we'll see how to do that. So that's going to be the overscan image and how to you can also generate an overscan camera. So that's going to be what we'll be doing in class number 6. So in the class number 7, that's where we're going to spend some time in Nuke by integrating the object. So that's where we're going to integrate the foreground portion of the image. So we'll see how to modify this instance of the cube so it's not the same texture on all the instance of this cube. We'll also see how to integrate this trash with the fire, and also we'll see how to add some heat shimmer on this here. So in this one, we're really going to spend some time by doing some reprojection of texture, and also learning various trick to delete portion of the geometry so that they blend nicely with the one from the plate. So of course, we're going to use multiple tricks, a lot of projection trick, and all that also to make sure that all our object fit nicely in our scene. So that's where what we're going to do in class number 7. Then in class number 8, that's where we're going to see some trick on how we can fix modeling problem that we have with our geometry. So you'll see that in this case, we had some problematic result out of Metashape for this window. So here, as you can see here, so what we'll be seeing in this class is how to, by doing some deformation, we can have better results like that. So from here to here, and so we'll see how we can deform geometry directly inside of Nuke to remodel our object. So we'll see some deforming trick that you can use to do then reprojection using the camera out of Metashape. And we're going to see then how we can merge this geometry with the original one from Metashape so that we can have the best of both worlds, and also see how we can merge multiple texture on a single geometry. So in this class, that's pretty much what we're going to do. See how to fix modeling problem, and then we'll be ready to jump to the next class, where we'll be adding this wall with the main building. So that's what we're going to do in the next class. So if we just take a look at this, that's where we're going to finalize our project. So we're going to put all that together. We're going to modify our shot camera to have a different camera move. You'll see how to do that. Then we'll see how to modify the geometry so that we can reproject the plate to have a different camera move. Then we'll start by, if we go a bit further here, that's where we'll be adding the main building. So we'll see other technique to extend the existing geometry so that to add some texture, just modify the geometry as well. And then at the very end here, we're going to see multiple trick like adding color correction using the position pass, how to fake reflection also in the window. Like here, we'll be adding some trick to just fake some reflection also in the water. So there's, in this training, we're going to see a lot of things to push this composite to the final stage that we wanted. So that's what we're going to do in the final class of this training. So as you can see, there's going to be a lot of stuff to learn either in Metashape or in Nuke. So so now let's go back in Nuke and take a quick look on the different camera setting and camera angle that are important when doing photogrammetry. Okay, so let's start our project by seeing how we can correctly shoot images for doing photogrammetry. So we'll see what are the most important settings of the camera to make sure that we have the best possible images for metashape. So although this example is going to be shot with a drone, everything that we're going to talk in terms of setting can be translated to any type of camera. So let's take a closer look at the building that we'll be making inside Metashape. So as you can see, it's a very simple building with nice texture. So it will be a good example to how we can remake an object inside Metashape. So let's talk about camera setting. So obviously there's three important setting when doing photo, and is the first one is ISO setting, the other one is the aperture of your lens, and the other one is the shutter speed of your camera. So each of those settings will affect greatly the result that you'll be having in Metashape. So having the optimal setting will really help you to have the best geometry out of Metashape. So let's take a look on how those settings affect the solving of Metashape. So the first one is the ISO setting. So I will see what you want to have, pretty much like when you're doing photo for anything, is to have an image with less grain if possible. So the way that this will affect the result of Metashape is that Metashape will solve high ISO setting with a lot of grain as some bumpiness inside your object. So if we compare this with which is a normal low ISO setting compared to this, you see that there's a lot of grain, and this will end up with a geometry with a lot of bumpiness on your geometry. So if possible, try to have the lower ISO setting as possible. Next, we have the aperture of your lens. So the depth of field will greatly also affect the way Metashape is solving each of your photo. So if we compare this, which is I think shot with f8, compared to this, which is 2.8, you see that everything get out of focus really fast in this image. So of course this was kind of a close-up shot, so still at f8 everything is getting out of focus, but you see that compared to 2.8 we're keeping much more sharpness in the image compared to 2.8. So obviously when you'll be shooting object a bit wider, f8 compared to 2.8 will have a much important effects, because everything at f8 will be pretty much sharp, unlike 2.8, which will give you some softness in your image. So for example, something like that, Metashape will probably in your everything that is out of focus like that. So the only contribution to this image would be the dead center pixel here, which are sharp. But in this one, we'll be keeping much more than in 2.8. So of course, if possible, if light permit the shooting, try to have a sharper lens with a higher aperture in your lens so that you get sharper object and sharper images. And then the other important thing is the shutter speed, because obviously if you are shooting handheld and the light is low, you'll need to slow your shutter speed. So any slow shutter speed will introduce motion blur, and everything here would probably throw some weird result inside Metashape. So if possible and you have access to a tripod to shoot your object, use a tripod so you'll be able to have dead sharp images. And also a tripod, when you'll have low light situation, will allow you to have the optimal setting for your lens. So you'll be able to use low ISO setting with a closed lens so that you have a sharper image, and also will make sure that your camera is not moving, so you'll be able to use all the best setting for your camera. So that's something to take in consideration when doing photogrammetry. Make sure that you're giving the software the best chance as possible to solve the best image as possible. Another important setting is the white balance of your images, especially if you're shooting in JPEG, because inside the software, when it will be time to build the texture of your object, Metashape will use the best images for all the different angle. So it will merge all the images in a single texture. And if your images are not white balanced one to another, then you'll probably end up with some color issue in your texture that won't match from one image to another. So to start with, you really want to make sure to have the same white balance for all your images. So if you're shooting in RAW, it's not an issue very much because you can always import all your raw file in something like Lightroom and set your white balance after, and then they all be using the same white balance, and then you can just export it to JPEG and they will be all matched together. But if you're only able to shoot in JPEG, make sure to set your white balance before starting all your shooting session. Next, let's talk about shooting angle for your object. So when doing photogrammetry, you want to have as many picture as needed without going too crazy. So you want to do a 360 around your object at different height of your object. So for example, in this building here, what I did is did 360 of the object at 3 different heights. So one low level, mid, and then one aiming toward the roof of the building. So just to make sure that our object that will be importing inside Nuke will be able to be shot from as many angles as possible. So what you really want to make sure is that from one image to the other, you have some overlap so that the software really understand the path of the camera as you were shooting your images. So make sure that you have at least something like 30% of overlap from one image to another. Another important aspect when shooting is to keep your camera movement close one to another movement. So you don't want to take picture of, let's say, a wall of the building, then go at the completely opposite side, take picture, then go maybe on the roof. Because once imported inside Metashape, by default, the software will always try to find the set of feature and this next image imported after it. So if your images are all over the place, Metashape will have a hard time finding the feature from one image to another. And so the best thing is to always move the camera in small position increment and bring that in the software so that it will really help the software to find all the feature from one image to another. So for example, if we take a look at the set of images I took for this building, you'll see that from one image to another, I have a lot of overlap so that the software can find the same set of feature. And also you see that my movement is consistent around the object. So I'm not moving to a completely different position from one image to another. So that will really make a big difference once you're in a software. So it will really help Metashape to solve all the feature of your images. Another important aspect to take in consideration when shooting is the proximity of your object in relation to the camera. So if you're too far away from the camera, of course, it will require less photo because you see more of the object. But the downside is that since all your images will be far away from your object, you'll end up with lower resolution for your texture, because what Metashape will be doing is taking the best angle of each taken from the object and merge it into a single texture. But if every photo was taken too far away, you won't have any good photo to generate a good texture. On the opposite side, if you take too close images, if your camera is too close to your object, of course, you'll have a far better texture detail in your images, but also since you'll be too close to the object, you'll have a lot more photo to take to see all the different angle of your object. So the best thing is to take your object as close as possible, but to see, if possible, all the object in the frame. So then you take your 360 around your object, so you have the best of both worlds, a good texture while seeing all of the object in every photo, so you'll have more feature to find in every photo. And then if you know that you'll need a part of your object to have really high resolution texture, what you can do is just take image of those part, so that Metashape will use those close up to generate a higher resolution texture. And that's also some camera that you'll be able to re-import in something like Nuke to reproject on the geometry, just for those solve camera to have a better texture just for those angles that you need. But that's something that we'll see once we'll be inside of Nuke. One very useful piece of software that you can use when doing photogrammetry is to use Google Earth. So with Google Earth, there's various things you can do. The first thing, of course, is to help you doing your scouting when you're looking for a specific kind of building or object. So let's say that I want to find a cathedral that I can do photogrammetry of. So without to have to go anywhere, all I have to do is type the kind of building, so cathedral. Then Google Earth will give me a list. And then what I can do is, well, take a look at the building to see if it fits my need, but also will allow me to verify the surrounding of the building to see if it will allow me to shoot this object. So that's a very useful thing that you can do with Google Earth. But one thing I like very much is to use Google Earth to do measurement of my building, so that if I will be merging multiple object or building inside my scene, I can make sure that they all have a good relation in size one to another. So let's say that I have this building here that we'll be using. So I have made this bookmark here. So here you see the building that will be doing photogrammetry. So what I can do with Google Earth is to take a measurement of the object that I'll be able to use inside of Nuke to make sure that it's having the right side inside the software. So to take a survey of the distance of an object, I'll use the ruler tool here and select the kind of unit that I want to use to do the measurement. So I'll use meters. Then I'll just select line. And then this will allow me to specify a distance of 2 points like that. So now Google Earth is telling me that this building is having is about 45 meters tall. So now I'll be able to translate those units inside of Nuke. And if I have multiple objects, I'll be able to make sure that they're having the correct size. And one other thing I like to use the ruler tool for is to make sure that if I'll be shooting this building with a drone, that I'll be doing it without offending any local laws. So for instance, in Canada right now with the current law, we cannot have a drone flying near 30 meters from any human being. So what I like to do, if just to make sure that I'll be able to shoot this building, is use the ruler tool and select the circle option. And then what you can do is just draw a circle like that. And I'll scale the circle until I have a radius of about 30 meters, like that. And then I can just move the circle like that. And if I know that my drone is going to move like that, I can see if I'll be doing it in a way that I won't be near any human being. So that's another thing that I like to use Google Earth, is just to make sure that first finding the right building that I want to shoot, but also make sure that my drone will be able to fly it around it without having any obstruction around it, but also that I can do it without offending any local law. So that's another thing that you can use Google Earth for. So when you'll be back in Nuke with your model object, what you'll be able to do is take the number taken from Google Earth and do a correlation with the unit of Nuke. So since we know that this building is 45 meters of width, now we can go in the top view and see how many unit currently this building is taking inside of Nuke. So if we count here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So about 10 Nuke unit. So if we want to pretend that our nuke unit are metered, then we'll have to scale our object by 4.5 to make it to 45 nuke unit. So now you know that all you have to do is take the transform geo and scale our geometry by 4.5. So now we know that if we count the number of unit, we'll be using 45. So now, knowing this information, if you bring back other kind of object model inside a photo scan, you'll be able to match the size correctly of every object one to another using the measurement that you've taken inside Google Earth. So that's a very useful way to make sure that all your objects are using the same scaling unit. One very useful software I like to use when doing photogrammetry with a drone is to use the Litchi app, which is a third-party application you can install to control your drone. So the feature I really like to use in this software is the focus flying mode, which will allow you to focus your camera to a single object so that you don't have to orient the drone yourself around as you're moving around the object. So as you see in the software, there's various mode that you can use, but the one we want to use is focus, which will let us specify a point on the map that we want the drone to always look at. So let's find our building here on the map. And once you have your object, you just need to click where you want to set the aiming point for your camera. So we'll just click here to add the point of interest. Then you can specify the height where the camera will be looking to your object. So if your object is low on the ground, you just specify something near the ground. So in our case, since the building is not that tall, we just specify 5 meter. And then you just click start. And as you'll see, now I'm just moving left and right. And you see that the drone is always looking at the building. So I'm not moving the camera right now. Everything is controlled by the app itself. So now if I move closer to the object, you see that the camera will also tilt down to the height that I've set in the software. So now you don't have to take care the angle of your camera. All you have to do is rotate, and the software will always make sure that your object is perfectly centered in the frame. So if you have a lot of photo to take and you don't want to mess around too much with the camera, you just have to set that in the app, and then the app will rotate it automatically for you in the around the object, and it will also, as you can see, take care of the height of your object as you're moving up and down in your scene. So that's a very helpful software that you can use when doing photogrammetry. So that concludes our first video on how to shoot for photogrammetry. So in the next video, we'll be jumping straight in Metashape and see how we can solve and generate object in Metashape.